Assalamu alaikum. My name is Asim, and I'm here to discuss a little about the different sentence types which are important for all the students from whatever board you are appearing or from whatever grade you are. Okay, but basically my focus is for the O level students. Okay, so that is the reason why I will also be discussing about the marking criteria too. So let us start with the different sentence types. So the first thing which usually come in mind, that why are we starting right from the very beginning? Now see, the sentence type is quite important. Um, for the writer. Okay, and we'll be, whenever we are writing something, whenever we are uh, writing it may be any essay or story writing or whatever, we need to have a mixture of or a variety of sentences. Okay, so if we just select one type and we start writing with it, it will become quite boring. So that is the reason why we should have a variety, and it is also required for the board, both for IGCSE and for O level both. Okay, now let us start with it. We'll be discussing the simple sentence, compound sentence, complex sentence, and complex sentences. Okay, so let us start with the marking criteria so that you may have the idea why I am saying that it is important here. Okay, so the first thing, the marking criteria. If you just look at this for paper two, that is the writing paper, okay, for O levels. And the first question, we'll just be discussing first about about question number one, that is the directed writing question. And if you see it closely, you will find out that for this part, if you see the third part, what is it said? Uses a wide variety of well constructed sentences accurately, including complex sentences. See, so what emphasis are they putting on is the use of complex sentences. So usually we are quite aware and quite used to of using simple sentences and at times using compound sentences, but we are not quite used to writing these complex sentences. So this is what they want. Okay. Okay, so let us start with another thing. If we'll just discuss about the second slide, see what they have mentioned here. When we'll just have this, see, we are talking about the composition, the narrative or descriptive, whatever part, whatever we are writing, that is up to us. And see what they have again mentioned here. The first one, use a wide variety of well constructed sentences, including complex sentences. Again, an emphasis is put on complex sentences. They want us to write these complex sentences to achieve this mark. Okay, to get these marks, whatever, if we are willing to get a steric or a, okay, in both the cases we should make a habit of writing these complex sentences also. Okay, now let us start with the work. Now, the first thing, now before starting, we should have an idea what an independent and a dependent clause is. Now, what is a clause? First, a sentence have at least one independent clause. What is an independent clause? An independent clause can also be taken as a simple sentence. Okay. And usually this type of sentences or this type of clause, either we can say a simple sentence or an independent clause. It almost means the same thing. What do we have here in the in this clauses? The thought should be complete. Whatever work is there, whatever sentence is there, the work should be completed. For example, we have this example here. She ate lunch. She ate lunch means that the everything is complete. Okay, why she is having lunch, when she is having lunch, why, what happened if she ate lunch, it has nothing to do. We don't have to write anything, we don't have to elaborate the sentence to complete it. It is a complete sentence. Okay, and usually when we talk about no, we won't be talking about right now, but the car drove on the road. That is a complete sentence. It does not require anything else here. On Tuesday, I had my test. A complete sentence. We don't need to write anything else. Okay, it is making sense. Nothing is left incomplete. Now, when we talk about the dependent clauses, an independent clause, it's the same thing when we talk about the, or it's somewhat the same as the simple sentence. That is the reason why at times I'm saying it a sentence or an independent clause. It means almost the same thing. Now let us discuss about the dependent clause. Dependent clauses are incomplete thought. When the thought is not complete, something is there which you need to answer, or something, there is something left behind. Okay, like for example, we have an example here: when I got home, it's not making sense. It's, there is some incompleteness in it. Okay, it's not complete. We need to answer something. Okay, what happened when I got home? There is something left when I got home. It's not a complete sentence because the restaurant was closed. So what happened? What happened then? Okay. Whom I respect very much. Whom are we talking about? See, there is so thought is not complete. The idea is not complete here. So what we have to do, we have to complete it. Okay. And how are we going to complete it? I washed the dishes when I got home. We couldn't eat because the restaurant was closed. The company's owner is Alice Brown, whom I respect very much. Okay, now we can write it either way, and I'll tell you later in other slides what I meant by it. That we can write it like this also: when I got home, comma, I washed the dishes. Okay, it's somewhat the same thing. We can also write it either way. It's not necessary that first we have to give an idea like I washed the dishes when I got home. We can write it either way, putting a comma here. But we'll discuss it in later slides how we are going to do it and why we should do it. Okay, now let's move on to simple sentences. What is there? As I have told you earlier, also, it's almost the same thing when we talk about the independent clause. It's somewhat the same thing. Okay, so don't get confused. If there is an independent clause, that particular clause can be taken as a simple sentence too. See, the examples are almost the same. She ate lunch. That's the same thing. What we have, an independent clause. Okay, that the idea, the basic thing is that the idea should be completed. Okay. So the car drove on the road. That is again the same example that was given earlier. Now, the only thing is here that a simple sentence may have more than one noun, but there is only one verb. This is a particularity of a simple sentence, that there should be only one verb. That means only one action is performed. Okay, that makes a simple sentence. If there are two actions, then we'll move on to other things and we'll discuss it right now also, but in other slides. So I hope you understand up till here. Now let us move on to this compound sentence. Now, what is a compound sentence? A compound sentence is made up of two independent clauses. An independent clause, I'm just writing ing. Okay, an independent clause, a comma. Okay. Now we can write any of the coordinating in conjunction here: either and, but, so, for, yet. Okay, any. And then again an independent sentence. This is how we make a compound sentence. A compound sentence is made up of two or more independent clauses, okay, and which are joined by a coordinating conjunction. This is a coordinating conjunction here. Okay. And before it, it is necessary to put a comma. This is the punctuation mark which should be inserted. Okay. Now, when we talk about this, the example is here. I like cats, comma, but again, the comma and a coordinating conjunction. My friend prefers dog. This is an example here. I like cats. This is a complete sentence. An idea is completed here. I like cats. That is all. There isn't anything left to answer. Comma, but my friend prefers dog. That means an independent clause, comma, and but we can use this fanboys. Okay, just to remember the coordinating conjunctions, we can use this word fanboys. Okay, so that it will come in our mind how we can make a compound sentence that for and nor but or yet so. We can use either of the coordinating conjunction in between two independent sentences and we'll make a compound sentence. Again, see, as I have told you, there should be a, you can say a sandwich, and in between, we have this coordinating conjunction and a comma. This comma is very necessary. This punctuation mark is very necessary. Okay. So please do not avoid it or do not forget to place it here. Okay. Because this punctuation mark is required to end up a clause. Usually, this comma is required when we are ending any clause. Okay. Now, independent clauses, again, there are two independent, as I have told you, two independent clauses, a comma and a coordinating conjunction. That makes up a compound sentence. Let us move on to other. There are variety. There's two variety here. There are two varieties here. And what are these? They are either, I can say variety or variations. That's the same thing. Okay. Now, how we can make a compound sentence? As I have told you earlier also, insert a comma before a conjunction, that is the coordinating conjunction, a comma and the coordinating conjunction. It could be anything as I have told you about these fanboys. Okay, so it will be easier to remember what coordinating conjunction we can put on, we can insert in to make a compound sentence. Okay. Now, the second thing which is here is semicolon. This is semicolon. How we are going to write a semicolon, a full stop and a comma. This is a semicolon, full stop and a comma. That makes a semicolon or semicolon. That is up to you how you pronounce it. And a coordinating conjunction with a semicolon. What we can do, we can replace this comma and which we have placed there in between two independent sentences. It can be placed by a semicolon. And how we can make a sentence here? I like hot chocolate. Okay, now I like hot chocolate. We can either use a comma and an and we can or we can use a semicolon and a comma, a semicolon, a full stop and a comma. Okay, so we can use it. We can use either. It sends me to sleep. Now, why am I emphasizing on this use of semicolon? Because there are very, very few students who know where they should place this semicolon. Okay, and what I have seen or what I have heard is that Cambridge, usually these examiners, they take it as something of higher degree when we talk about punctuation, that they know it well, that there are very few students who know the real usage where they should use this semicolon. If you are inserting it, see, the sentence is again the same. You don't have to write anything. What you are doing is that instead of comma and, or instead of comma and any coordinating conjunction, what we are doing, we are replacing it and we are putting a semicolon here. Okay, so that means the same thing. What we'll have to do, if we'll just put one semicolon here instead of a comma and an and, that will do the same thing. But obviously, that will really impress the examiner. Okay. Now, let us move on to another thing, that is the complex sentences. See, that's the highest, you can say, the degree what they want, or this is actually what they want you to write. When you are writing your narrative or your directed writing, this is what they expect you to at least have a few of the complex sentences in your writer. Okay? That is the reason why they have mentioned it again and again. If you want to achieve a steric or a, that depends, a steric or a, you should use this complex sentences. Now, how do we make the complex sentences? When we talk about complex sentences, see, for the this compound sentence, we have used two independent clauses, and in between we had either a semicolon or a comma and any of the coordinating conjunction. Okay. But when we talk about the complex sentence, what we'll have to do, we should have one independent clause and one independent clause. Now that depends whether we are putting a comma in between or we are not putting anything else. Okay, that depends on the sentence. If we are using a dependent clause first, obviously we'll put a comma. Okay, but if we are writing an independent clause first, at times we don't require a comma here. But usually this complex sentence have two clauses, one independent and dependent. Now that depends. Okay, it's not necessary that we should have a dependent clause first and an independent clause later. That depends, we can write it either way. Okay, we can have this independent first and the dependent later. That is up to us. Okay, what type of sentence we are making. Now let us go on for the example here. Although it was raining. Now this is a dependent clause, comma, we went for a walk. This is an independent one. Okay, so this is how we usually make the complex sentence. Let's move on to the next part. Here are for a few more examples how you can make it and how you can write it either way. Okay, now see, again, as I have told you earlier, that we can have independent clause first and we can also have dependent clause first. That depends on what we are writing and how do we want to write. Okay, now see, she fell asleep. She fell asleep. That's an independent clause because she was tired. Okay, this is an independent clause. Okay, because she was tired, comma, she fell asleep. Now that's again the same sentence, but what we have done here, we have mentioned independent first and dependent later. And for the second sentence, we put a dependent clause first and an independent clause later. It's the same thing. It is how we are placing it. Okay. So if we are writing that, I have told you again, but I'm repeating it so that you'll remember that if we want to write a dependent clause first, we should insert a comma. And why we are placing this comma? So that even the examiner or anyone, the reader, we are not specifically talking about the examiner, but we can write it anywhere. Whatever we are writing, it could be for anything. We are not only writing for the exams, we can write anything. So whenever we are writing, it is just to end up a clause. Usually this comma is placed and it is a sign that the clause is ended up here. And now after that, there will be another clause. Okay, something different, but the clause is there. there are two clauses. So just to you can say, okay, just to show that this clause has end up here, we put a comma there. Okay. Now, moving on to the fourth part. The fourth type, the fourth type is compound complex sentence. Compound complex sentence. Now, what does this name indicate? It means that we are combining two types of sentences, a compound sentence and a complex sentence. That means, what does that mean? An independent clause, a dependent clause, and an independent clause. Okay, again, it means the same thing. It is not necessary that it should be in the same way, that an independent clause comes first, the independent clause will be somewhat in between, and independent clause again. Now, see, we have three clauses here. Okay, now what if I say what I meant to say when I say compound complex sentences? See, what we'll have to do here, for example, this is just an example. If we are writing an independent clause here, an independent clause, comma, and it's just an example. We can write any coordinate, we can just add up any coordinating conjunction here, and again, an independent clause. So that makes up a compound sentence, isn't it so? Now, what if we just share this independent clause with the complex one? We are just continuing it. The same independent clause is here. Okay, independent clause, the same one. Okay, now here how we are going to differentiate it? We should put either which, what, a different subordinating conjunction should be put here. Okay, just to relate it, and then again there will be one dependent clause. Now see, this will make a complex sentence, and this will make a compound sentence. So can you say it a compound complex sentences when we are sharing the same independent clause here? There are three clauses, one clause, clause two. Clause two is again the same thing. We are just sharing it, and a dependent clause. Okay, so a complex sentence and a compound sentence. Is the idea clear? Now, this is how we are going to make a compound complex sentence. Okay, let's go with the example. It's just mentioned here, but it is again divided into different segments. Okay, that I enjoyed going to the park. When the sun shines, I often bring a book. Now, see, the idea is the same, but we are just, you can say, okay, breaking it into segments. Okay, now what we'll have to do, we'll have to insert a subordinating conjunction and a coordinating conjunction in between to make a complete sentence. It is a bit complex type of, I won't say complex, but there is some complexity when we use or we make these compound complex sentences. Okay, let's go for an example here. A compound complex sentences. Compound complex sentences. A compound complex sentences is like Frankenstein monster. You must have read the story of Frankenstein, a tidbits of everything. So we have a tidbit of compound sentence and a tidbit of complex sentence. And we have shared either an independent or a dependent clause in between. Isn't it so? This is how we make a compound complex sentence. Okay? So it's made up of compound sentence structure and complex sentence structure. It has bits of both sentence types. Now, this is an example here. An example is here. There are some rooms near my house. This is an independent clause here, isn't it so? And why we have placed a comma just to end up this clause. Okay, this is just an indication that the clauses end up here, has end up here. Okay, that it has ended up here, and we put a subordinating conjunction here, which just to relate it with another clause. My cousins and I used to play in when we were younger. This is a dependent clause, isn't it so? Again, a comma is placed to show that the clause has ended up here. Okay? And I go there sometimes. Now, this end is the coordinating conjunction and it is dividing again. I go there sometimes when I need to think. This is again another independent clause. So, what we have here, independent, dependent, and then again independent clause. Isn't it so? Now, this dependent clause is shared by a complex sentence. Okay. So we can say what we have mentioned it earlier also. And if we just break it into different segments, again, it is mentioned here clearly an independent clause, a subordinating conjunction, a dependent clause, coordinating conjunction, and an independent clause that makes up a compound complex sentence. Got it? Okay. There are few examples also of compound complex sentences. There should be two independent clauses joining a coordinating conjunction, a dependent clause. Okay. Now, let us take the first one first. Let us take the first one. She took out her umbrella because it was raining. Now, see, we did not place any comma here. This is a complete complex sentence. A complete complex sentence. Independent clause first. This is independent clause. Now, because the independent clause is coming first, so we need not to put a comma here. Okay? Because it was raining, this is dependent. Okay? Then, and a coordinating conjunction. Then this is the what we call subordinating conjunction. She walked home. This is again an independent clause. Independent, dependent, and dependent clause. Okay. Now it is not necessary to put it again in the same way. Okay. Like for example, we have, if we just mention this first, second, third one, the third sentence. As I put the kettle on, this is a dependent clause. And that is the reason why we have placed this comma here. I looked in the jar for biscuits. This is independent clause, comma, and that, sorry, but is again the coordinating conjunction. Okay. I couldn't see any in there. An independent clause. This is an independent clause. So what we have here, dependent clause, independent clause, and then again an independent clause. So it is not necessary that we should have a dependent clause in between. I know it's a bit complex. And if you are able to handle this compound complex sentences, only then I would recommend. This is my personal recommendation, my personal opinion. Okay, so there isn't any hard and fast rule that you should try to make this compound complex sentences. But again, that's my own recommendation that if you can handle it properly, only then go for compound complex sentences. Otherwise, the Cambridge is there isn't any much requirement. They didn't ask you to go for compound complex sentences at this stage. The higher what they wanted you to do, the maximum what they wanted you to do is to use complex sentences. That is, I guess, enough. If you can handle it, go for it. But if you think that you won't be able to handle it, or you cannot do it properly, then please do not make yourself confused with it. Okay, that is my own personal opinion. Okay, now let us just have one of the example here, adding beauty to your writing. Why we are using these all these compound and complex sentences? Why we are just getting into it? Okay, why we are making the tasks difficult for us? Now, see, it's not the making of the task difficult, but it is just adding, we just want to add beauty to whatever we are writing. See, for example, if we just read out the first one, this first para, what it says: I love to read books. I enjoy playing football with my friends. I like helping my parents at home. I always try to do my best in school. I am happy when I learn new things. Don't you think it's a bit boring? There is so it's so much monotonous, isn't it? So कि सब एक जैसा है. Everything is somewhat the same thing. So how are we going to rank it? We won't give good marks here, isn't it? So we can just, for example, we can just, this is what we can get maximum. Okay, now let us move on to the next part where we have added three compound sentence and a complex and few one of the complex sentence. There's only one complex sentence. Okay, but see how much change will it be. This is the second one. Okay, let us read this out. I love, it's the same thing, the idea is the same. We have just used compound and complex sentence to just have a little variety here. Okay, now see how it will do. It's just something apart from the usual arrangement. I love to read books because they take me to new worlds. I enjoy playing football with my friends and it helps me stay alive, active. I like helping my parents at home whenever they need support. Although studying can be challenging, comma, I always try to do my best in school. I feel happy when I learn new things that make me grow. Now see, you find the difference here. How will you grade it? What if I say 7 out of 10 or 8 out of 10? Somewhat like this. Somewhat few of you will might grade it 7 or 8 or somewhat in between. Isn't it so? Now, for the third one, we have just added one compound complex sentence here. I love to read books because they take me to new worlds. I enjoy playing football with my friends and it helps me stay active. I like helping my parents at home whenever they need support. Although studying can be challenging, I always try to do my best in school. I feel happy when I learn new things that make me grow. And I believe learning is a journey that never ends. So there's only one compound complex sentence at the end. And you may find the difference here. You can even rate it around 10. Oh, sorry. Rate it 8 out of 10, isn't it so? It could be 8 or somewhat. It's somewhat like this. There isn't much difference here. But you can find a great difference between these two. A lot of difference. You can grade it 4 out of 10 or 5 out of 10. But that is a huge difference here. But there isn't much difference in between these two. This is just my opinion. So if you can handle again, I'm telling you again and again, if you can handle, go for it. Okay? So we are just ending it up here. We need, and until our next video. Okay. Bye bye.